Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about independent and dependent variables. So when researchers do experiments, there are two different kinds of variables in the experiment. One is an independent variable and the other is a dependent variable. So an independent variable is a variable that the researcher controls or manipulates, and the point is to see if there's an effect of that manipulation on the outcome variable, which is the dependent variable. Okay. So as an example, you could imagine a study where a researcher randomly assigns people to receive either a drug or a placebo, and then measures the blood pressure of each participant. Right? In that case, the independent variable would be which treatment they received. And that independent variable has two levels, either the drug or the placebo is what they received. The outcome measure that they're looking at is the dependent measure, and that's the blood pressure of each participant. As another example, we have students are randomly assigned to take an exam, either online or on paper. And the researcher then records scores on the exam. In that case, our independent variable would be which group they're assigned to in terms of how they take the test, either online and paper. So there are two levels of that independent variable. And the outcome variable is the score on the exam. And that's our dependent variable. In experimental designs, researchers manipulate independent variables. Right? They have control over those independent variables. But in some studies that are not true experiments, we instead have our groups that people are in that are pre-existing groups that you don't manipulate, you don't control, you don't put people into. They are just in these pre-existing groups. And this could be something like people's income level. They have low, moderate, or high levels of income. Right? You don't randomly assign people to that level of socioeconomic status or income. That's just where they already are. Or you can look at things that are just impossible or unethical to manipulate. It could be things like people's gender or whether they've experienced some sort of previous trauma. Right? In those cases, the researcher doesn't manipulate the independent variable, but people are in pre-existing groups, and so those are called grouping variables. Okay? So a grouping variable when you're doing statistical analyses in software, they'll often refer to all variables that are independent variables or grouping variables as just grouping variables, because it doesn't matter from a statistical standpoint if you manipulated or did not manipulate the independent variable. What's important is which groups they're in. The reason it's important to know if the variable was manipulated is because of experimental control and research design, and it'll let you make different inferences about whether the independent variable causes the dependent variable based on whether or not that variable was controlled by the researcher. Right? So that's a bigger issue than I want to deal with in this slide. I just want to make the point here that independent variables traditionally are variables that are manipulated, and grouping variables are also sometimes called subject variables, where they're variables or groups that people are in before they even come to the study. Okay, and that is all for this video.